understand that the Finance Minister has now been invited to come in and deliver the budget 2024. Well, I guess we may have to hold on to the very thoughts of Professor Pepper, as you have in your shots on our TV, clad in white as usual, is the Finance Minister of the Republic of Ghana, Kenneth Nanaya Kuntunkunuku Ofori-Atta.
Right, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Members of Parliament, on the authority of His Excellency, the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and pursuant to Article 179 of the 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana and Section 21(3) of the PFM Act 2016 of Act 921, I respectfully, Mr. Speaker, present to you the budget statement and economic policy of government for 2024 financial year. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this august House approves the financial policy of the government of Ghana for the year ending 31st December 2024. Respectively, I also submit to this Honorable House the following statutory reports: the 2023 annual report on the petroleum funds in line with Section 48 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act 2011, Act 815 as amended, and the 2023 report on the utilization of the African Union levies pursuant to Section 7 of the African Union Import Levies Act 2017, Act 952. Mr. Speaker, this budget is an abridged version of the 2024 budget statement and economic policy of government. We have also developed a more detailed update on sectorial performance in a Volume 2 document. I request the Hansard Department to kindly capture this document as the budget statement and economic policy of government for the financial year 2024. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today to present the 2024 budget, which seeks to advance us on the path towards fiscal consolidation, macro stability, and growth that began a year ago. Mr. Speaker, I first want to take the opportunity to express immense appreciation to His Excellency the President for the privilege to present the national budget on his behalf over the past 7 years. More importantly, I want to express my profound gratitude to God for the grace, mercy, and favor toward our nation. Together with the psalmist, let us say, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless His holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all His benefits." Psalm 103, 1-2, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to express my deep appreciation to you, Right Honorable Speaker, and the honorable members for their support over the years. We have not only agreed, but we also eventually find common ground in the interest of the Republic, and as we share in this collaboration, which will continue. Mr. Speaker, almost a year ago on Thursday, 24th November 2022, I presented the 2023 budget and, as always, gave an honest and forthright update on the economy, highlighting the extent of the challenges facing our country. Indeed, a month before, His Excellency the President also pointed out that never have so many malevolent forces come together in a perfect storm to impact our lives so dramatically. Key macro indicators then were uninspiring. Against that backdrop, I then presented government's plan of recovery, focusing on restoring macroeconomic stability, coordinating an equitable debt operation program, ensuring that the vulnerable are well protected, negotiating a strong IMF program, a strong private sector growth agenda, and attracting significant green investments to promote growth. Mr. Speaker, in 2 out of the last 7 years, 2020 to 2022, the Ghanaian economy has faced challenges. The economy, growing at an average of 7% with a single-digit inflation, declining interest rates, and a stabilizing currency, suffered unforeseen shocks like many other economies. GDP growth slumped from 6.5% in 2019 to 0.5% in 2020 as the lockdown and closure of businesses and the ports had a devastating effect on the economy, triggering cost of living crisis that has made lives difficult for the Ghanaian people. Though battered and bruised, we are not broken, and our resilience is manifesting. Mr. Speaker, we also saw the damaging effect that the economic downturn had on Ghana's already stretched revenues. This was even made worse by the additional expenditures that were required during the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure that life and livelihoods were protected. Mr. Speaker, 2020 was also in an election year, the first ever election in the Fourth Republic with zero donor funding. However, government sensitivity to our people was remarkable. No layoffs in the public service, salaries were dutifully paid over the year, and free water and electricity for the entire population was provided, especially the lifeline consumers. Indeed, entrepreneurship was not ignored as this House passed a 600 million CD CAP-BAS program for GEA, which was effectively deployed. Mr. Speaker, permit me to clarify that the disruption to our macroeconomic path over the last few years was not peculiar to Ghana. The global disruption to supply chains, adjustments to new forms of work, and shifts in demand pursued some of the most cataclysmic effects on inflation and growth worldwide. This set off the worst form of global cost of living crisis since World War II. We turned the corner when in record time we completed the IMF first review of 6 performance criteria, 3 indicative targets, and 3 structural benchmarks. Our task now and in the medium term is twofold: to maintain stability and to keep on growing. We are determined to remain on the course of increased growth, currency stability, and disinflation over the medium term. Our future growth prospects are certainly brighter, and I'm confident that this budget, this victory budget, this Inkunim budget, would ensure that we boldly walk on a sustainable path towards creating decent jobs and wealth for our people. For with national dedication, the Lord will continue to give us treasures from dark places and hidden riches in secret places. Mr. Speaker, our promise to all stakeholders, in particular to the people of Ghana, is that the Akufo-Addo government is determined to maintain the discipline, compassion, and creativity required to keep the economy stable and maintain the robust growth. Mr. Speaker, today I accordingly present the 2024 budget to set out the broad medium-term policy framework underpinning our approach towards recovery and stability with growth. Among other things, it provides a pathway towards fiscal consolidation and macro stability. It sets out the new debt sustainability path after the excruciating domestic debt operation with aftershocks on the financial sector. It outlines the policy priorities underpinning the 5-year growth strategy with focus on selected initiatives over the next 14 months. It comes just after the successful first review of the 3-year, $3 billion IMF ECA program, where we reached a staff-level agreement on Ghana's performance in meeting the 6 QPCs, 3 indicative targets, and 3 structural benchmarks. In the US, Mr. Speaker, inflation surged from a low of 1.8% in 2019 to 6.5% by 2022, and is currently at 3.7%. We have seen this reflect in interest rate decisions by the US Federal Reserve and also in benchmark yields. The yield on the 10-year US Treasury instrument is currently at 4.6%, compared to 1.4% 2 years ago. This is an economy whose currency is a global reserve currency. We see similar trends in the Eurozone and also in the UK. Inflation in the UK, Mr. Speaker, was 1.7% in 2019 and recorded at 11.1% in October 2022, a 41-year high. Mr. Speaker, in the media review, I informed the House that we had started turning the corner. Today, it is evident that we turned the corner when inflation started declining from 54.1% in December 2022 to 35.2% in October 2023. We turned the corner, Mr. Speaker. Despite a 1% projected growth, the economy galloped at a remarkable pace and clocked an average of 3.2% growth in the first 2 quarters of this year. We turned the corner when the currency had been under severe pressure over the past 2 years, depreciated by a modest 6.4% in the past 9 months, compared to 53.9% a period in 2022. The performance of the city is also a reflection of the fact that confidence is back, revenues have improved, and that the recovery is indeed real and is here to stay. We turned the corner when companies started going back to the job markets to hire workers. We turned the corner when international credit rating agencies, which have not been favorable to Ghana in recent years, started being positive about the economy. And we turned the corner when the banking industry started to record and report a profit after tax growth of 43.8% of 6.2 billion this half year. All of this, Mr. Speaker, deepens our democratic development by prioritizing resources for institutions to support the conduct of the 2024 general elections. It commits us to funding existing projects in roads, rural electrification, rural telephony, IPEP, and our areas. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 budget is even more significant because we cross, Mr. Speaker, the 1 trillion gross domestic product mark for the first time in our economic history. Let me repeat, Mr. Speaker, Ghana's economy under President Akufo-Addo in 2024, final year in office, is projected to be valued over 1 trillion Ghana cedis in 2024 from the 219.5 billion we inherited in 2016. Mr. Speaker, 2024, 1 trillion gross domestic product. Mr. Speaker, fundamentally, this is a government that is self-aware, reflective, and has been open throughout the process to incorporating citizens' feedback in preparing this budget. And as in previous years, we have prioritized stakeholder consultations. Consequently, we engage with and obtain valuable inputs from key stakeholders, including investors, traders, academia, organized labor, civil society organizations, bankers, development partners, faith-based organizations, a cross-section of the leadership and other honorable members of Parliament. We also launched, Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue on 2nd November 2024, a new and innovative platform, 23, to deepen our collaboration and partnership with the private sector. The platform aims to enhance the long-term competitiveness of Ghana and increase our attractiveness as a hub for businesses on the continent. This will have a standing committee co-chaired by the Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister of Finance, and the private sector. I want to assure our stakeholders that we have, as much as possible, reflected the proposals and recommendations from these engagements in the budget. There is to be done with the shared ideas, and the Mutual Prosperity Dialogues will be a robust and dynamic platform to inform future policy changes. Mr. Speaker, the Akosombo Dam spillage. Mr. Speaker, in the last few months, we have been witnesses to the devastating impact of the Akosombo Dam spillage. This follows excessive rainfall recorded in several parts of the country. to preserve the structural integrity of the dam, the Volta River Authority commenced controlled spilling on 15 September 2023. This led to the flooding of downstream communities in parts of Volta, Eastern and Greater Accra regions. The heavy rainfall also caused flooding upstream of the Akosombo Dam and impacted communities in the Savannah, Oti, and Bono East regions. Government, through VRA and NADMO and various agencies under the 13-member high-level interministerial committee headed by the Chief of Staff, comprising of the Ministries of Energy, Finance, Local Government, Environment, Interior, Health, Sanitation, and Water Resources, Defense, Roads and Highways, Education, Information, Health, and Gender, have subsequently, Mr. Speaker, provided various forms of support to the impacted communities. The support included food and related items, drinks, mattresses, mosquito nets, coils, clothes, baby food and diapers, sanitary pads, treated water services and storage tanks, solar lamps, sanitation services, of utility services, and some social infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the visit of the officials of the Ministry of Finance and myself with VRA to the victims of the Akosombo Dam spillage in Mepe in the Volta region was truly revealing and sobering. Indeed, we empathize with the families that have been affected and displaced by the spillage. We met victims, townsfolk, children, and the chiefs, and of course, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Okujeto, during the visit. Mr. Speaker, government has budgeted an amount of $220 million to support the relief phase for the communities affected by the Akosombo spillage, as well as floods upstream in the Oti, Savannah, and Bono East regions. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, this is for your eyes only. Honorable members,
Mr. Speaker.
Please, it is not for your mouth, it's for your eyes. So let's go on. Let's go on.
Mr. Speaker, we couldn't help but to show a shot of the Honorable Member of Parliament, Okujeto, in this picture. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the Ministry of Finance, after the visit, was quickened to respond. We have requested funding from the World Bank under the IDA Crisis Response Window to support the resettlement of the victims, restoration of livelihoods, compensation, and reconstruction of infrastructure in the affected communities. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the place of climate policy and financing to help address the long-term effects of climate change on victims of drought, flooding, and other adverse weather events. Accordingly, the Ministry has applied to the Global Shield Against Climate Risk Fund, an initiative launched by President Nana Akufo-Addo and Chancellor Scholz during the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, to assess additional financial resources to support communities upstream and downstream of the Akosombo Dam. I convey the sincere appreciations of His Excellency the President and the entire government to all groups and individuals who have empathized with and supported the affected families. It is in the same spirit that we must continue to be grateful to God that no lives have been lost due to the devastating spillage from the Akosomo Dam and the support that we have all given. Mr. Speaker, we have worked hard and invested significant resources, and being sure of this knowledge, I can confidently assert that over the past 7 years, every sector has been positively impacted. Every household has been positively impacted by our social intervention programs. And every region has been positively impacted. Indeed, President Akufo-Addo has deepened decentralization development by investing $442 million to create and resource 6 new administrative regions, the most in our history since independence. Consistent with our policy on what we call preferential options for the poor, i.e. leaving no one behind, we have been historic in enhancing social mobility and protected the vulnerable in our society. In this regard, we have since 2017 improved access to quality senior high school education for about 5.7 million Ghanaians by investing 8 billion cedis in the future of our next generation. We have increased enrollment and learning outcomes of 3.8 million pupils by investing over 3.6 billion in the school feeding program. We have reformed the NHIS to improve and expand health service delivery to 16 million Ghanaians out of the targeted 20 million Ghanaians. We have supported foundational education of over 6 million pupils by investing 248.5 million as capitation grants. Mr. Speaker, we also have more women in schools than men. We have improved the quality of life of about 350,000 Ghanaian households under the LEAP program by investing 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, it has been 7 years of grace and positive impact. We are determined to do more to boost the capacity of the private sector, to expand productivity and create jobs. In the past 7 years, Mr. Speaker, we've invested over 32.7 billion to keep the lights on and support the growth of businesses. We have invested 25 billion to facilitate the repositioning of the financial sector and enhance its ability to assist business operations. To date, the Development Bank Ghana has facilitated 1 billion cedis in competitive financing for the private sector, and GERSEL continues to mitigate risk in the agriculture sector. Supporting 100,000 young graduates to secure workplace experience and employment by investing 2.4 billion in NATCO, invested 7 billion to build road and transport infrastructure and improve connectivity and productivity, invested 541 million in 169 IDF, 1D, 1F enterprises to scale up value addition and provided 140,000 additional jobs. And we have created, Mr. Speaker, over 2.3 million jobs in the private sector and public sector, approximately 900,000 in the private sector and 1.4 million in the public sector. Mr. Speaker, capital spending is equally important to the future of our country. Consequently, we mobilized and deployed resources, expanded the railway network, including connecting Tema to Mpakadan to promote trade on the Eastern Corridor, construction of 12 fish landing sites and 2 fishing harbors at the cost of 19.5 billion to promote the fishery-based livelihood of our coastal folks, improved community infrastructure by investing 2.2 billion into over 2,000 projects under the IPEP initiative, promoting inner city development by spending 190 million under the Zongo Development Fund, expanded and improved the road network by investing about 16 billion, Mr. Speaker, recording the most kilometers of roads and interchanges done in the nation's history. Mr. Speaker, we also invested 1.7 billion in the National Identification Scheme to ensure that 17.5 million eligible Ghanaians acquire security-sensitive ID cards. This has laid the foundation for a prosperous future where digitalization provides more convenience, introduces an added layer of efficiency in delivery of public services, and enhances our ability to safeguard our national interests. Mr. Speaker, I want to stress at this juncture that Ghana has paid its dues, Ghana has turned the corner, and we are getting back on track. Despite these successes, we have to do more to reinforce our stability and guarantee decent jobs with good pay for the young people of our country. As such, through the 2024 budget, we'll deliver even more investment across the rail sector to place our economy on a firm growth trajectory that will create more jobs, safeguard our climate prospects, and deeply entrench Ghana as the seed country of Africa's development renaissance. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to invest in ongoing projects, and on the external front, we'll conclude negotiations with the Official Creditor Committee to ensure that the work on eligible externally funded projects resume. We will, through the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue, be intentional about collaboration with the private sector and our development partners to support local businesses, attract FDI, and enhance the economic prospects of our people. Indeed, given the potential to upscale and the multiplier effects that our small and medium-sized businesses possess, government intends to scale up support to young entrepreneurs and fledgling businesses with a singular aim to create sustainable jobs across all communities. In this view, the ministry has teamed up with MEDA and is committing 1 billion Ghana cedis to ensure that our enclave projects developing our productive capacity for exports. Mr. Speaker, we are also positioning a generation of Ghanaians to secure our leadership in the global arena. Today, our country hosts the headquarters of the AFCFTA. We also have a privileged position Mr. Speaker, we are also positioning our generation to secure our leadership in the global arena. Today, our country hosts the headquarters of the AFCFTA. We also have a privileged position in leading the climate change charge. As the agreed host of the Climate Vulnerable Forum Secretariat, we are galvanizing a coalition of 68 nations and 1.7 billion people to shape the climate discourse and secure resources for a just energy transition. Mr. Speaker, that is the promise of this budget, and we will keep our eyes firmly fixed on the future and build lasting prosperity for this and the next generation. Mr. Speaker, as members recall, we came into government in 2017 in a period of grave despondency, meager resources of 2 fish and 5 loaves. Today, we can only marvel at how the Lord has multiplied these resources. I'll now proceed, Mr. Speaker, to update the House on the macro fiscal performance of the economy. Mr. Speaker, global economic recovery remains sluggish, primarily due to a confluence of setbacks, including the lingering effects of supply chain disruptions and geopolitical events, and the increasing cost of living across many economic blocs. The disruptions in energy and food prices and efforts to combat record high inflation through tightening global monetary policies have considerably slowed down economic activity globally. According to the IMF's October 2023 World Economic Outlook, global economic growth is anticipated to decelerate from 3.5% in 2022 to 3% in 2023, and at best 2.9% in 2024. These projections are noticeably lower than the pre-pandemic historical average of 3.8% from 2000 to 2019. Projections of 3.1% global growth over the medium term are lowest in decades and the prospects for countries to achieve higher living standards are also therefore bleak. Global inflation is expected to gradually decline because of monetary tightening and declining international commodity prices. Global inflation is expected to fall from its peak of 8.7% in 2022 to 6.9% in 2023 and further 5.8% in 2024. Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic imbalances are also improving, evidenced by falling inflation in most parts of the region. However, a slowdown in reform efforts, a rise in political insecurity within the region, and external downside risks, including China slowing down, could undermine growth. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to present the macro performance of the first 3 quarters of 2023 within the context of the targets that were set in the 2023 Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review. Before I proceed, it's important that I restate the targets we set in the 2023 Mid-Year Fiscal Review. These include overall GDP growth of 1.5%, non-oil real GDP rate of 1.5%, end period inflation of 31.3%, overall balance commitment of overall primary balance commitment of minus 5.7% of GDP, primary balance commitment basis of minus 5% of GDP, and gross international reserves, excluding oil funds, encumbered assets, and pledged assets, sufficient to cover at least 0.8 months of imports of goods and services by end 2023. Mr. Speaker, provisional macroeconomic data on the performance of the economy for the periods Q1 to Q3 2023 demonstrated government's relentless commitment to keep us on the high road to recovery. The IMF rightly described Ghana's recent macroeconomic performance in the first review as compelling performance, and I quote, "Honorable members, may we wish to refer to the IMF's press release numbers PR 23/339 and dated 6 October 2023 for this update. As I indicated during the 2023 Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review, the prompt deployment of strong fiscal and monetary policy measures largely accounts for the continued macroeconomic stability and economic recovery. Growth in 2023 has been more resilient than earlier expected. Inflation has been on the decline faster than expected. The fiscal and external balances have improved, and the exchange rate has broadly stabilized." Mr. Speaker, government introduced the Gold for Oil policy in 2022. The policy, which leverages the Bank of Ghana's domestic gold purchase program, was intended to provide foreign exchange financing for the importation of petroleum products and help reduce demand for US dollars from the bulk import distribution and export companies who would have otherwise gone to the market to source forex for the importation of petroleum products. Since then, Mr. Speaker, under the Gold for Reserves program, the Bank of Ghana has purchased a total of 17.89 tons, $1.14 billion US dollars of gold to boost its gold reserves. In addition, under the G40 program, Gold for Oil program, 23 cargoes, circa 800,000 metric tons of gasoline and gas oil equivalent to 30% of national consumption have so far been imported. The G40 program has significantly contributed to the stabilization of the cedi-dollar exchange rate, 17 cedis to the dollar in November 2022 to 12 cedis to the dollar in November 2023, leading to a reduction in the ex-pump price of diesel from 23 cedis per liter, Mr. Speaker, to 12 cedis per liter today. Mr. Speaker, I'll now update the House on the performance of our macroeconomic indicators. Real GDP growth averaged 3.2% in the first half of 2023, compared to 2.9% in the same period in 2022 signaling a strong rebound. Robust growth in services averaged 6.3%, and agriculture also averaged 6.2%. Sectors were the key drivers. It is instructive to note average growth of 3.2% for the first 2 quarters of 2023 is higher than 2023 revised growth target of 1.5%. Price developments indicate that inflation is on a declining path in response to ongoing fiscal consolidation, appropriate tightening of monetary policy, and relative stability in the exchange rate. Headline inflation declined by over 16 percentage points from 34.1% in December 2022 to 38.1% in September 2023 and 35.2% as of October 2023. The cedi has stabilized against the US dollar since early 2023. With a year-to-date, Mr. Speaker, a year-to-date cumulative depreciation of 25% compared to 54% in 2022. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the cedi has only depreciated by 6.4% on cumulative basis since February 2023, compared to, Mr. Speaker, 53.9% over the same period in 2022. The stability of the cedi largely reflects the positive impact from the restoration of economic activity, including robust economic growth, improvement in the current account position, improvement in forex liquidity following the IMF ECF inflows, Bank of Ghana's domestic gold purchase program, reduced speculative forex demand as market confidence rebounds. Gross international reserves as of September 2023 stood at 5 billion, 2.3 months import cover, compared to 6.3 billion, 2.7 months import cover at the end of 2022, but expecting only a 0.8 months at mid-year when we stood here to pronounce where we were heading to. We are yet, Mr. Speaker, to reflect IMF, World Bank, and Cocoa Bond indications of approximately $2 billion by year-end. The current account turned positive at 1.1% of GDP at end June 2023, a monumental turnaround from the deficit of 2.1% of GDP at end December 2022. Likewise, the trade balance improved to a surplus of 2.6% of GDP as of end August 2023, from 0.7% of GDP surplus at end December 2022. Though interest rates moderated from December 2022 to the first quarter 2023, they picked up again as T-bills remain the key debt instrument in the debt market after the DDEP. For instance, the 91-day Treasury declined from 35.5% in December 2022 to 18.5% in March 2023, but increased to 29.8% as of Monday, 13th November 2023. The overall budget deficit on commitment basis as of end August 2023 was a deficit of 3.0% of GDP, outperforming the targeted deficit of 4.6% of GDP. The outturn largely reflects improvements in revenue mobilization and slower execution of expenditure. The corresponding primary balance on commitment basis was a deficit of 0.7% of GDP, also outperforming the target surplus of 0.9% of GDP. Public debt accumulation has slowed down significantly as government continued to consolidate its public finances, and also reflects the impact of the domestic debt exchange program and the ongoing external debt restructuring. Total public debt has declined from 73.1% of GDP at the end of 2022, Mr. Speaker, to 66.4% of GDP as at September 2023. The completion of external debt restructuring is expected to further improve Ghana's debt to GDP ratio. Mr. Speaker, the 2023 fiscal framework was revised during the 2023 mid-year fiscal policy review to reflect updated macro-fiscal developments and align with the fiscal adjustment path under the IMF-supported PCPEC path. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal performance for the first 8 months of the year using provisional data shows significant progress towards a stronger fiscal consolidation. More specifically, Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants was 9.1 billion, 9.3% of GDP, 2.8% lower than the program target of 82.2 billion, 9.6% of GDP. Total expenditure commitment was 104.6 billion, 12.2% of GDP, 14.1% lower than the target of 121.8 billion, 14.2% of GDP. Primary expenditure commitment was 84.7 billion, 9.9% of GDP, 6.0% lower than the target of 90.1 billion, 10.5% of GDP. Primary balance commitment was a deficit of 5.5 billion, or 0.7% of GDP, compared to the target deficit of 7.9 billion, 0.9% of GDP. Overall fiscal balance commitment was a deficit of 25.4 billion, 3% of GDP, compared to target deficit of 39.6 billion, or 4.6% of GDP. And overall fiscal balance cash was a deficit of 26.1 billion, 3% of GDP, compared to the target deficit of 44.6 billion, 5.2% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, we are doing much better than predicted. Mr. Speaker, based on the overall macroeconomic objectives and the medium-term targets, the following macroeconomic targets are set for the 2024 fiscal year. Overall real GDP growth of at least 2.8%, non-oil real GDP growth of at least 2.1%, end period inflation rate of 5.0%, primary balance on commitment basis of a surplus of 0.5% of GDP, and gross international reserve to cover not less than 3 months of imports. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 and medium-term fiscal framework has been prepared in line with the objectives and policy priorities of a 3-year IMF-supported PCPEC program. The primary balance on commitment basis is the fiscal anchor we are using to assess our fiscal effort. Over the medium term, we plan to improve the primary balance commitment from a deficit of 4.3% of GDP in 2022 to deficit of 0.5% of GDP in 2023, a huge 3.9% adjustment. The primary balance is expected to improve further to a surplus at 0.5% of GDP in 2024 and 1.5% of GDP from 2025 onwards. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants is projected at 176.4 billion Ghana cedis, 16.8% of GDP, as we move towards our 18% target. And this is underpinned by permanent revenue measures, largely tax revenue measures, amounting to 0.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure is projected at 226.7 billion, 21.6% of GDP. This projection reflects a reduction of 6.1 percentage points of GDP in total expenditure commitment basis compared to the outturn in 2022. This large decrease comes from the combination of fiscal consolidation efforts of 4.9 percentage points of GDP, reflecting an adjustment in revenue by 1.1 percentage point and primary expenditure by 3.9 percentage points of GDP. The potential interest rate savings from the ongoing external debt operation will further bolster public finance sustainability. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates for total revenue and grants and total expenditure, including arrears clearance, the overall budget balance will be financed in a fiscal deficit of 61.9 billion, equivalent to 5.9% of GDP. A corresponding primary balance is a deficit of 5.9 billion, equivalent to 0.6% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance, acting through the Ghana Revenue Authority, as per Section 4 of the Ghana Revenue Authority Act 2009, introduced the Property Rate Reform Project. The objective was to develop a unified common platform capable of billing, collecting, and reporting property rates nationwide. Mr. Speaker, the initiative has encountered some challenges that's making it difficult for the relevant bodies, including the Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Assemblies, to have access to their share of the property rate collection on time. Mr. Speaker, to address these challenges, government is reviewing the overall structures and processes to determine the optimal way forward. In the interim, districts will resume collection as these challenges are resolved. Mr. Speaker, tax reliefs. Our approach to tax policy since 2017 was to give significant relief to the private sector until expenditure pressures from 2020 required a more aggressive approach. It is important to note that in the short term, fiscal sustainability requires that we improve our tax ratios significantly, otherwise our long-term competitiveness will be eroded. As we all know, our country's 13% tax to GDP ratio is far below our peers. Our target is 18 to 20%, and we are on course for 16%, hoping to be achieved this year. In that regard, it is difficult to implement all the structural reforms and tax reliefs needed to immediately lower and or eliminate certain tax handles. However, I assure this august House that we have heard. We believe in lower taxes as a government for industry, and we are working at this aggressively with the GRA and to be cemented with the Standing Committee of the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. Mr. Speaker, further to the above, the following reliefs have been prioritized for implementation. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Speaker, a VAT flat rate of 5% to replace the 15% standard VAT rate on all commercial properties will be introduced to simplify administration. To address the negative externalities of plastic waste and pollution, government will review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Mr. Speaker, the Stamp Duty Act 2005, Act 689, has not been reviewed since an enactment in 2005. To realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties. The bands subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed. Mr. Speaker, a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. This approach will make it easier for taxpayers to fulfill their tax obligations to the state. Mr. Speaker, the Tripartite Committee has concluded negotiations on the national daily minimum wage. The tax-free portion of the individual income tax rate will accordingly be adjusted to take care of the change. Government recognizes the constraints our medical personnel face in providing health care for our citizens. With the passage of the Exemptions Act, government will engage the Ghana Medical Association on waivers for importation of vehicles to ease the transportation burden on our doctors. The policy will enable them to deliver quality and timely health care. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we have always been committed to protecting the quality of life of our people. Total wages and salaries for workers has increased from 14.7 billion in 2016 to 37.5 billion. All workers were paid full wages and salary on time, even when revenues plummeted during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the difficult economic challenges, we paid 15% cost of living allowance for 6 months in 2022 to cushion the 949,000 workers, some 50% more than we had in 2016. Mr. Speaker, as reported in the 2023 Mid-Year Fiscal Policy Review of the 2023 Budget Statement Economic Policy of Government, a spending arrears clearance and prevention strategy was developed and approved by Cabinet for implementation. This is part of the measures to achieve the objective of bringing public finances back on a sustainable path through improved efficiency in public spending. To clear the system's stock of arrears, the Ghana Audit Service has begun the verification and validation of the arrears identified as at end December 2022 before payments are made. Mr. Speaker, to prevent the accumulation of new arrears, government has put in place the following measures to enhance commitment controls and prevent the accumulation of arrears. Alignment of the quarterly budget allotment of cash flows forecast and tighten the use of allotments as a control on the gift miss rather than a budget starting with the 2024 budget. Standardized contracts for public works to ensure flexibility in budget execution, review standard tender documents to include clauses that make the award of the contract null and void if not supported by gift miss generated purchase order. All MDAs will be required to use GANEPs for all procurements to enhance transparency and efficiency in the procurement of good works consultancy, non-consultancy, and asset disposal. Improve budget execution practices by undertaking the following. Approval of MDA's commencement requires to be done within the first quarter of any fiscal year to allow MDA sufficient time to complete procurement and payment processes before end of year. Enforcement of the use of gift miss for all transactions to prevent unbudgeted expenditure. Internal audit agency to ensure that public officers within covered entities adhere to the legal and regulatory principles governing public financial management in the discharge of their duties. All public officers, particularly principal spending officers of covered entities, will be held to the strict application of the specified sections as specified in Section 96 to 98 of the PFM Act. Mr. Speaker, the Public Financial Management Act 2016 Act 921 was passed to regulate the financial management of the public sector within a macroeconomic and fiscal framework. This law sets out stringent accounting, audit, and reporting requirements for public funds. As the first finance minister to oversee the implementation of this critical law, I am confident that this government has been the most transparent and accountable in our history. Over the past 7 years, I have laid before this House 55 statutory reports to fulfill the provision of this law. These include the annual report on petroleum funds, report on the utilization of the African levies as examples. We have also learned key lessons from the helpful feedback from our stakeholders. Most of these formed the core of the macro-critical reforms being implemented under the IMF-backed PCPEC program. Mr. Speaker, as the government's PCPEC program enters the second year, we plan to assess progress and deepen our collaborations for reforms at the PFM Summit to be organized by April 2024. We encourage our development partners to join us on this journey. Mr. Speaker, in the rail sector, we expect overall rail GDP growth to increase from an expected 2.3% in 2023 to 2.8% and reach 5% in 2027. This yields an average growth rate of 4.3% over the 2024-2027 period. Non-oil rail GDP is projected to slow down from an estimated 2.8% in 2023 to 2.1% in 2024 and pick up to 5% by 2027, giving an average growth rate of 4.1% over the 2024-2027 period. Mr. Speaker, the Bank of Ghana has maintained the tight monetary policy stand to firm up the disinflation process. Among other measures, the bank has further raised the monetary policy rate by a cumulative 300 basis points in the year to September 2023 to 30%. In the outlook, monetary policy in 2024 and at the medium term will aim to regain price stability. Inflation is expected to remain within the IMF's program's monetary policy consultation clause of 29.4%, with a symmetric band of 4% at the end of 2023, an end-year target of 15% in 2024, and trend further down to the medium-term target band of 8 plus or minus 2% by end December 2025. A tight monetary policy stance, favorable base drifts, relative stability on the foreign exchange market, and a favorable food harvest are expected to outweigh inflationary pressures over the near term. In the outlook, the external sector's performance will largely depend on the conclusion of negotiations with the country's external creditors. Also, the Bank of Ghana's policy thrust will remain focused on increasing external buffers through sustainable means. The exchange rate is expected to remain stable, supported by continued progress with the implementation of the IMF-supported program. Expected inflows from the cocoa syndication loan, the second tranche of the IMF loan, mining inflows, and the BOG's continuation of the Gold for Oil program. The main risks to the external outlook include increasing uncertainty about geopolitical tensions and volatility in commodity prices. Mr. Speaker, the IMF Executive Board approved Ghana's 3-year, $3 billion IMF-supported post-COVID-19 for economic growth on the 17th of May 2023, after the government of Ghana secured a staff-level agreement on the program in December 2022. The program, as you know, aims to restore macro stability and debt sustainability, build resilience through the implementation of wide-ranging and strong structural reforms in key sectors of the economy, and lay the foundations for stronger and more inclusive and private sector-led growth while protecting the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, the IMF-supported PCPEC is assessed semi-annually by the IMF through an IMF staff review mission, followed by final approval by the IMF Executive Board. Disbursements under the program are tied to successful completion of each review. The reviews assess our progress towards meeting the quantitative performance criteria, indicative targets, and structural benchmarks. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to inform this august House that based on the IMF's own assessment at the staff level, after the first review, Ghana met all the 6 quantitative performance criteria. The 2 out of the 3 indicative targets, the 2 met a floor on social spending, a floor on non-oil public revenue. The indicative target of 0 net accumulation of payables was extended largely to the ongoing negotiations with energy sector IPP on legacy debt. And 6 of the 7 structural benchmarks due end 2023 were also met, and subsequently the 7th has been met. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal incentives and reliefs I announced previously are in line with government's 5-year growth strategy, which was approved by Cabinet in August 2023. This is to stimulate and sustain economic growth, even as we restore macroeconomic stability under the IMF-backed program. The first phase, which is a 14-month program, essentially focuses on scaling up prioritized existing programs and attracting private sector investments to deliver rapid results without significant demands on budgetary resources. Mr. Speaker, the growth strategy prioritizes key sectors of the economy, including agriculture, agribusiness and aquaculture, trade, industry and export promotion, tourism, as well as digitization and technology. The recently launched Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue will support this path of growth. A permanent steering and technical committee, co-led by the Ministries of Finance, as well as Ministry of Trade and Industry and the private sector, and supported by development partners, is being set up to drive this collaboration for growth. Mr. Speaker, last year I discussed the enormous impact of the food import bill on exchange rate volatility and inflation. I made clear how unsustainable the imports are and the need to change course. The growth strategy therefore supports the implementation of interventions that increases our capacity to produce, deepen value chains, facilitate and modernize storage facilities, and increase the shelf line of products. These improvements are expected to help support exports, build forests, exchange buffers, and reduce inflation of earmarked funds. Mr. Speaker, we would also like to appreciate on this level the contributions of key stakeholders, including the Managing Director, the management and staff of the IMF, the World Bank, the AFDP, and development partners who played diverse roles in this journey. Mr. Speaker, we are equally grateful to the Council of State, CSOs, labor unions, Employers Association, AGI, FBOs, think tanks and research institutions, and all other stakeholders who played various roles in the process. Let me note, Mr. Speaker, Labour's remarkable composure and historic agreement yesterday to ensure that our discussions with the fund was not derailed. We thank Labour for this. Mr. Speaker, Planting for Food and Jobs 2.0. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister, just a minute. Honorable members, in line with Order 42 of the standing orders of our House, I hereby direct that sitting be held outside the normal sitting hours. Honorable Minister, you may now continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in seeking to change the course of the agriculture sector, the President in August 2023, with the new Minister of Agriculture, launched the Planting for Food and Jobs 2.0. By design, PFJ 2.0 places greater emphasis on value chain approaches and focuses on strengthening linkages between actors along eligible agricultural commodity value chains, broadly categorized into grains, roots, and tuber vegetables and poultry. The PFJ has a special focus on poultry to address the heavy reliance on imports. Accordingly, 15 anchor farmers and 500 outgrowers in 5 regions, Ashanti, Greater Accra, Bono, East and Eastern regions, will be selected to produce 65,000 metric tons of broilers in 2024. Mr. Speaker, the significant shortfall between demand and domestic production of vegetables requires urgent action, especially considering the impact of the recent supply disruptions from the Sahelian region. The engagement of onion producers and importers prior to this 2024 budget revealed the importance of developing an onion index to track the production. The engagement of onion producers and importers prior to this 2024 budget revealed the importance of developing an onion index to track the production, distribution, and consumption of the commodity. It emerged during these engagements that in 2022, demand for onions was 314,000 metric tons, while the local production was 179,000 metric tons. In addition, the national demand for tomatoes in 2022 was estimated at 1.3 million metric tons, while local production stood at 468,000 metric tons. These are 2 prominent vegetables in the Ghanaian households. Mr. Speaker, PFJ2 therefore seeks to improve the supply and utilization of high-quality inputs, facilitate credit guarantees for aggregators to procure improved seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, and supply them on zero-interest credit terms to vegetable farmers in the immediate and short-term future. Furthermore, the condition and capacity of existing warehouses will be improved to enhance the condition and capacity in storing bumper harvests and maintaining price stability. Mr. Speaker, the growth strategy also aims to boost fish production, mostly through increased focus on oceanic and inland earthen ponds. The goal is to support fishermen, fish farmers, and fish processors in our coastal regions. The interventions planned in this subsector include direct support for production, distribution, and storage of fish, as well as producing and supplying over 110 million liters of premise fuel using gasoline and condensate. Mr. Speaker, part of PFJ2's program strategy is to support the private commercial agriculture under the Economic Enclaves project. Towards this, priority has been given to securing and developing lands to offer security of tenure for large-scale agriculture investments. The focus on large-scale commercial agriculture is to harness the benefits of scale and scope of economics, promote the adoption of technology for efficiency and standardization, as well as support price stabilization efforts. As of December 2022, 3 enclaves in Kasonya, Greater Accra, Kumewu, Ashanti, and Banda Oti region were operational. 5 out of 5 other enclaves are planned in 2024 to promote value addition, integration, and deepening aggregation and value chain systems to serve as economic growth goals. The 3 operational EEPs will lead to production of 160,000 metric tons of rice by end of 2024, over 110,000 acres of land in cultivation for the key staples. Private sector actors investing on EEP will provide employment for the youth with a target of at least 5,000 jobs. Already, Mr. Speaker, 10 private sector actors have responded to the expression of interest to predominantly act as anchor farmers on the developed lands. Government will also pursue the interest expressed by other international private sector operators to unlock investments and technology for the economic enclave projects. We are also using the EEP to leverage catalytic financing from key partners, including MasterCard Foundation and the African Development Bank. To implement the economic enclave at scale and speed. As I mentioned, Ghana Cedi's 1 billion has been allocated to Millennium Development Authority to complement PFJ 2.0. This funding will be dedicated to providing critical infrastructure, including irrigation canals, as well as cleaning and developing land for private sector actors in the EEP. Other key interventions under the Ghana Cares program, such as the completion of a foundry, will benefit from this funding. MEDA has a remarkable record from the implementation of 2 compacts under the Millennium Challenge Corporation, one of which was agriculture and agribusiness. They continue to demonstrate experience and ingenuity that will accelerate the delivery of the growth goals to transform agriculture in our country. Mr. Speaker, the Digital Youth Village, as a key initiative under Ghana Cares, involves collaboration between the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization, Ministry of Finance, and University of Ghana to support tech entrepreneurs and create vibrant tech hubs. To date, the DYV project has completed the design, land location, site clearance, as well as securing an architect and contractor initiating the construction phase. Phase 1 of DYV project is expected to be completed before end December 2024. Mr. Speaker, in the area of trade, industry, and export, the key operations under 1D1F free zones, export promotion, strategic and core industries, and business regulatory reforms have been prioritized under the growth strategy. Altogether, earnings from non-traditional export are expected to increase to 4 billion and 4.8 billion in 2024 from 3.51 billion in 2022. 271 licensed free zone companies are expected to increase earnings to 2.19 billion in 2024 compared to earnings of 1.8 billion from 207 licensed free zone companies in 2022. Mr. Speaker, Ghana remains the preferred tourist destination in the sub-region. The steady stream of domestic and international tourists also requires dedicated spaces in cities to drive a night economy and tourism. As we promote December in Ghana initiatives, we'll also work towards enhancing security and the lightening infrastructure. A task force comprising public regulators and private sector actors has already been established to drive the night economy initiative and the public-private partnership arrangements. Mr. Speaker, on 14th November 2022, almost exactly a year ago, government launched the Youth Start initiative as a direct response to the employment challenge facing our country. Through this initiative, government sought to create an entrepreneurial nation by providing training, competitive funding, access to markets and technology to our youth. This is to cause a cultural shift and guide our teeming youth into entrepreneurship by assisting them to start, build, and grow their own businesses. Mr. Speaker, a year on, the preparatory works have been completed. The 3 components of the initiative, Youth Start District, Entrepreneurship Program, Commercial Program, and the Youth Start Grace Program, have also been developed and piloted successfully. On 20th September 2022, government signed an MOU with 11 banks and the Ghana Association of Bankers to support entrepreneurs gain access to capital to enhance their business. The Ghana Association of Banks have worked with us to train the participating financial institutions on the program and have completed the design of a technology platform to receive applications. The National Banking College has also been engaged under the program to train beneficiaries on behalf of the participating banks. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Enterprises Agency and the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program has been brought together as a cohesive unit to co-lead the district entrepreneurship component of the Youth Start program. Mr. Speaker, All is set to accelerate the implementation of USAT. We are working with our partners, the World Bank, to secure additional financing, Mr. Speaker, of $150 million US dollars. On our own, we are committing 200 million Ghana cedis to ensure that more young persons are supported into entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, through their strategic partners, has completed the Mineral Resource Estimate Report that has been prepared in line with Joint Ore Reserves Committee standards. The results of the report indicate significant bauxite quantities, making the project a commercially viable one. Mr. Speaker, the master plan has been reviewed and given a seal of approval by KPMG. To ensure, Mr. Speaker, the various mineral discoveries are informed, deposits of iron ore are commercially viable, a high-level mineral resource study has been commissioned by GSDEC, working with the private partners. The capital incentive activity has been uploaded to Ghanaian private partners to produce a standard bankable report at no cost to the government of Ghana. This is to ensure that the integrated iron and steel industry is not faced with a continuous decline of domestic production and processing of metallic minerals and associated dependence on foreign supplies for our needs. Mr. Speaker, key interventions to improve the business environment include enhancing the business regulatory reform, crowding in private sector financing of 20 billion through foreign direct investments, and amendments to the GIPC Act has been completed and submitted to Parliament. The Speaker, the group strategy sets ambitious targets for easing access of the domestic private sector, including medium and long-term finance at competitive rates. Government will leverage the plans of the Development Bank of Ghana, GESL, Venture Capital Trust Fund, and the Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund to provide loans, partial guarantees, and venture capital to private entities with transformational and strategic projects in agriculture. Mr. Speaker, channels would include the Development Bank of Ghana to increase the lending volume of the Development Bank of Ghana to 2 billion cedis for 2024. For GESL to provide 350 million partial risk guarantees to leverage private sector participation in the agricultural sector. Government will also support DBG for fundraising of an additional $1 billion in 2024 to support their work. Mr. Speaker, the IFC, working with government, will pursue the 500 million commitment of financing from the World Bank's IFC as a partner in Ghana's Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. The recapitalization of banks. Mr. Speaker, government and the World Bank will recapitalize the banks through the Ghana Financial Stability Fund and the Financial Sector Program, with over 10 billion cedis, Mr. Speaker, to enable aggressive financing of private sector businesses. Mr. Speaker, the banks will be recapitalized in the coming week. Furthermore, venture capital trusts will be given additional funds to ensure that the private sector has access to that. Mr. Speaker, the stock of global debt as a share of global GDP was 258% last year. Moreover, as of 2022, the stock of public debt was 238%, 9 percentage points higher than in 2019. To return Ghana to a path of debt sustainability from a debt to GDP ratio of 89%, Mr. Speaker, we aim to be at 66% this year. The goal is to achieve a 55% debt to GDP ratio and 18% revenue to GDP ratio over the medium term. Mr. Speaker, Ghana completed the first phase of the DDEP in February 2023, where 82 billion cedis of old domestic debts were exchanged for new bonds. In this process, Mr. Speaker, the average coupon of 9.1% were achieved with a participation rate of 84%. Mr. Speaker, we have come to the end of the domestic debt exchange program and need to focus on the external debt restructuring to further improve the debt trajectory. Even more to enable us reach the target landing zone of 55%. Mr. Speaker, discussions with the Eurobond investors are continuing. We have given a broad outline of 20 to 40% haircut under 20 years and interest rates of less than 5%. Ghana bilateral creditors, Mr. Speaker, are also working with us, and we expect the OCC, Mr. Speaker, to come up with a memorandum of understanding which would ensure that this body co-chaired by France and China will deliver the appropriate MOU to the IMF for their board meeting next week. Mr. Speaker, we envision that in the coming week, also extensive discussions of our IPPs should lead to some resolutions on our payments of energy systems. And Mr. Speaker, I'm confident that this will successfully be done in the coming few days or weeks. The fund, Mr. Speaker, is also offering $250 million from the World Bank, supported by sub-fund targeted at qualifying banks and SDIs, and a CD equivalent of $500 million of GOG-funded sub-fund that will help, as I mentioned, to recapitalize a state-owned financial institution, as well as potentially supporting other indigenously controlled financial institutions. In addition, a provision of $4 billion has been made in the 2024 budget to address NIB, distressed SDIs, and other outstanding legacy policies in the financial sector. Notwithstanding the ongoing litigation commenced by shareholders of Black Shield Capital Management Limited, formerly Gold Shield Securities, the SEC will continue to engage the official liquidator and clients of the defined Black Shield to reach a consensus on a framework for a bailout, intervention, and an amicable resolution to the impact. Mr. Speaker, in the 2024 budget, government will build on the significant investment that have been made to date and promote its key interventions covering social spending, infrastructure governance, security, and climate change. Mr. Speaker, on social spending, the government's flagship free senior high school and TVET programs continues to create and expand access to secondary school education in the country. In a generation's time when we have a more educated population which sustains social mobility and cohesion, we appreciate the significance of these decisions. In the year under review, we continue to support, Mr. Speaker, far from this, in the year under review, we continue to support a total of 448,000 first-year senior high school students, bringing the total beneficiaries for 2023 academic year to 1.3 million students. In 2024, the implementation of this transformative initiative will continue. Mr. Speaker, we continue feeding grants for over 7,500 students in special schools and capitation grants to all public basic schools across the country. Additionally, registration fees of over 471,000 prospective candidates from public junior high school for the BCE were paid to guarantee that all candidates will sit for the examination. Mr. Speaker, support for beneficiaries of the LEAP program was sustained in 2023. Government invested some $298 million to support 350,000 families. In 2024, the program will improve financing by 50% more and continue to provide meals to more schools to enhance basic school enrollment. The National Health Insurance Scheme, Mr. Speaker, is now active with coverage of 60 million people, representing 80% of the targeted group. Efforts to integrate the Ghana card into the enrollment system are progressing steadily. Mr. Speaker, over 740 million has been invested to feed over 3.8 million pupils one hot meal a day in 10,000 of our public basic schools. In 2024, the program will continue to provide meals to enhance basic school enrollment. Mr. Speaker, we continue to improve on our road networks, and Mr. Speaker, once the official accreditor committee has made its announcement, we will continue with all extended funded projects that will be resumed. However, the following projects are ongoing and at various stages of completion. Kumasi Lake Road and Drainage Extension Project is completed. Reconstruction of Bichem Techimanchia Akomadin Road is 71% complete. Construction of flyover on the Accra-Tema motorway from Flower Port Runabout is 60% complete. Phase 2 of the Tema motorway runabout, including construction of the third tier of the interchange, is 56% complete. Construction of 4 major bypasses at Osino, Enyinem, Inyirisi, and Konongo along the Accra-Kumasi Highway commenced in 2023 and at various stages of completion. Reconstruction of Agona and Kwantatoka Road is 44% complete. Dualization of whole main roads and traffic management works 100% complete. Selected roads in 2nd D and Takoradi Phase 1 is 28% complete. Dualization of Nsawam of Fanko Road, including the widening of the road to 10 lanes over 6-lane expressway and 4-lane service road interchanges at Amasaman, Bobiman, Midyear, and Nsawam project is 30% complete. Construction of 4-tier interchange at Swame in the Ashanti region has commenced. Mr. Speaker, the following projects under the Master Project Agreement for Sino Hydro Corporation has been completed. Tamale Interchange, Western Region and Cape Coast Inner City Roads, construction of Hohoi, Jasikan, Dodi, Pepesi, 64.4 kilometers, upgrading of selected feeder roads in Ashanti and Western Region. However, the following are at various stages of completion. Sunyani Inner City Roads, construction of Sunyani and Brekum Inner City Roads, PTC Runabout Interchange, Takoradi, 80%. Mr. Speaker, government is in the preparation for the reconstruction of the Accra-Tema motorway under the road sector's public-private partnership with GIF is on course. The concession agreement and draft engineering, procurement and construction EPC agreement have been approved by Cabinet and will be submitted to Parliament for approval shortly. Mr. Speaker, government infrastructure program will also be anchored on a strong private sector collaboration. To this end, government will continue to pursue the mining sector roads rehabilitation projects to improve the road network in mining communities. Government will begin the formalization of agreements with the mining companies and mining-related industries to fund and commence the rehabilitation of roads in the mining enclaves in 2024. Selected communities include Takoradi, Agona, and Kwanta, Takoradi Dualization and Township, Presia, Bogoso Township, Dunkwa, Obuasi Township, Afia and Kwanta, Manso, Nkran, Konongo. Mr. Speaker, to promote trade and transit from the Tema port, the capacity of Tema Hospital Road will be improved under PPP arrangements. Accordingly, government has developed a deed of transfer to be executed. Mr. Speaker, government has renegotiated the contract terms of the large general hospital project and will now be funded through the national budget. The contractor is expected, Mr. Speaker, to be back on site next week to complete a significant amount of work by 2024. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with government's strong commitment to industrialization, a total of 169 One District, One Factory projects are currently operational, leading to a total employment of 169,000. An additional 152 factories are currently under construction and expected to be fully operational in 2024. These industries are expected to increase value addition and support our efforts to reset the economy. Mr. Speaker, to improve connectivity within the sub-region and facilitate tourism, the upgrading of the Tamale Airport has been completed. To complement this effort and facilitate trade through Ghana's transit corridor, the construction of the Buankra Integrated Logistical Terminal is being executed and is about 54% complete. Following the approval of Ghana's Energy Transition Investment Plan, government has commenced the development of a national electric vehicle policy as part of efforts to create an enabling environment for the uptake of electric vehicles. Mr. Speaker, government has rolled out the National Rental Assistance Scheme in February 2023 to ease the burden of huge rent advance payments by prospective tenants. Mr. Speaker, government continued works on phase 3 of the Security Services Housing Program, involving the construction of 320 units for the Ghana Police Service at the Ghana National Police Training School, Tesano. In addition, work commenced on the first phase of the revised National Affordable Housing Program at Pokwase that was launched by His Excellency the President and the Minister of Works and Housing. Government will commence work on the National Affordable Housing Project at the Deso in the Ashanti region to complement the Pokwase project. Mr. Speaker, under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, government continues to embark on strategic investments across our communities nationwide in line with the Fiscal Consolidation Plan. Through the development authorities, over 340 projects were completed in 2023 and accordingly handed over to the beneficiary communities. Rural telephony. Mr. Speaker, government constructed a total of 1,010 rural telephony sites under the Rural Telephony and Digital Inclusion Project to provide voice signals in underserved and unserved communities. In 2024, the remaining 1,006 sites will be built and integrated and financed for voice and data services to ensure reliable, affordable, and secured broadband infrastructure under the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, with regards to rural electrification, in line with government to achieve universal access to electricity by 2024, a total of 189 communities have been connected to the national grid, with 211 communities at various stages of completion. The national electricity access is estimated to have reached 88.85% as of the third quarter of 2023. Our goal, of course, is to exceed 90% by the end of 2024. Mr. Speaker, under the Girls in ICT initiative, 2,000 girls and 200 ICT teachers in the Savannah and Northern regions were trained. Additionally, a total of 287 laptops were presented to the best performing students and teachers in both the Savannah and northern regions. In 2024, 3,000 girls and 300 ICT teachers will be trained in Ashanti, Greater Accra, and Volta regions. Government, Mr. Speaker, seeks to continue to find a program to resource a one laptop per child program so that the population will become tech savvy. Mr. Speaker, we will look to raise appropriate financing for this. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana.gov platform deployed in 2020 has onboarded 1541 MDAs, MMDAs, and state-owned enterprises, with 130 of these entities actively utilizing platform for various functions, including processing payments. This has yielded a total of 164 billion since its inception. In 2024, NITA will enroll government agencies responsible for revenue collection onto the platform. In addition, a citizens app will be integrated into the platform to enrich citizens to government engagement and allow persons with disability to address the platform to foster inclusiveness. Mr. Speaker, the new Conduct of Public Officers Act seeks to address current weakness in asset declaration system. The new act will introduce provisions that ensure public officers submit their declaration in time and that an effective verification system is in place. The draft bill is under consideration by Cabinet and will be submitted to Parliament subsequently. Government will also committed to ensuring the implementation of the second phase of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan to foster public accountability and transparency. Mr. Speaker, government will continue to resource the Ghana Armed Forces to collaborate with other security services in the operations such as Cowleg, Calm Life, Halt, Gong, Conquered Fit, etc. Mr. Speaker, the establishment of 15 forward operating bases along the northern border of the country to also prevent cross-border crimes and terrorist infiltration are also progressing steadily. In addition, the FOB at its level in the Western region is 55% complete. Mr. Speaker, internal security by the Ghana Police Force continues to be sustained, and Mr. Speaker, the police service improved community watch program for professional motorbike riders has elevated the sense of security in the country. The service received 100 Toyota Hilux pickups, 6 armored personnel carriers, and 600 motorbikes to augment the fleet of the formed police visibility and motorbike patrol units to enhance their work. Mr. Speaker, immigration service is also being improved. The service also conducted 5,900 inspections at various locations and bringing much security to the country. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of independent power producers, government has continued to engage key operational independent power producers in positive and constructive bilateral negotiations. Engagements have centered on the sustainability of Ghana's energy sector, as well as the restructuring of legacy IPPs and power purchase agreements, future-proofing timely payment to IPPs going forward, and the implementation of critically needed energy sector reforms. Government aims, Mr. Speaker, to finalize commercial agreements with key IPPs in the coming weeks. Mr. Speaker, government remains mindful and appreciative of the continuing commitment on the part of IPPs, not only to support Ghana's power sector, but to collaborate with government and the ECG to achieve sustainable future for the sector, while shoring up Ghana's reputation as a compelling investment climate. Mr. Speaker, Ghana has been at the forefront for advocacy for a fit-for-climate global financial architecture while expanding its engagement to mobilize climate finance. At the 2023 IMF World Bank Group annual meetings, Ghana secured critical financing to support climate adaptation and mitigation measures. These include $54 million to establish a Ghana Share Landscape Emission Reduction Project, $4.8 million successfully earned by reducing nearly 1 million tons of carbon emissions through forestry conservation. We expect to earn over $45 million in 2024. Additionally, government has signed 6 MOUs with Switzerland, Singapore, Sweden, South Korea, as well as some public and private entities in line of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Mr. Speaker, our leadership as chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum and the Vulnerable 20 Group is a prime example directed by our Ministries of Finance, Environment, Science and Technology, and Innovation, and Foreign Affairs. Under Ghana's tenure, we've not only raised our global standing in climate discussions, but also championed the interests of climate vulnerable nations. Our President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo chairs the CVF. Since 2021, under the direction of Ghana's direction, the CVF and V20 have driven a forward-thinking agenda to counter climate change threats. Crucially, Ghana has been instrumental in pushing for reforms in the global financial system to make a more conducive environment for resilient growth and sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, advocating for reform the global financial system underscores our commitment to focus on a future where climate resilient growth and sustainable development are at the forefront. By championing this, Ghana will lead with a vision for climate resilience in a more environmentally imperative way. It is a pathway to enduring prosperity and stability for developing countries globally, ensuring that we are equipped to face climate challenges while progressing towards a sustainable and prosperous future. Mr. Speaker, today I have highlighted our collective achievements as a nation to this august House. I've also demonstrated how our investment over the last 7 years have positively impacted individuals, households, businesses, and communities. We have, Mr. Speaker, a safer country. We have a more physically and digitally connected society. We have a more educated and skilled population. Through our policy approach, the foundation for a country has been laid where ingenuity is being encouraged, innovation is supported, public service is valued, responsibility is shared, prosperity is shared, and accountability for the custodianship of public resources is prioritized. Mr. Speaker, this is marked change from when I first stood before this House on 2nd March 2017. At that time, Mr. Speaker, doomsday had decimated the incomes of businesses and households. The financial sector was weak and near collapse. Trained nurses had stayed home for years without employment. NHIS was in arrears for over a year. A sizable number of Ghanaians were unable to access senior high school education. Above all, our economic prospects had dimmed considerably. I refer then to the biblical story of 5 loaves and 2 fishes to illustrate the approach in turning the economy around. Mr. Speaker, I stood here in March 27 and asked that the country's poultry, 2 fishes and 5 loaves be multiplied. Indeed, as a young boy gave all he had to the multitudes, so have we. And the Lord, in response, has blessed our nation, and this we should not forget. From a nominal GDP, Mr. Speaker, of 262 billion in 2017 to 1 trillion in 2014. Invested in the future of our children under the free SHS program, with 1.2 million students having access to free secondary school education. We supported the poor and vulnerable through an enhanced LEAP program by increasing the number of beneficiary households from 212,000 in 2017 to 350,000 in 2023, with an aim of 450,000 in the medium term. We invested in provisioning 1 hot nutrition meal per day to 3.2 million pupils in our basic schools and provided steady income stream for 32,496 caterers. We invested the most in the construction, rehabilitation, and upgrading of major roads network across the country. We supported small businesses with $750 million during the COVID-19 pandemic through the CAPBAS program and other interventions. We invested, Mr. Speaker, in making sure that all public workers were paid every month during the COVID-19 pandemic, including the teachers who were paid for all the 9 months when the academic calendar was disrupted. We invested to strategically establish 160 factories across the districts under 1D1F, investing in the expansion of health infrastructure in every district under the Agenda 111 initiative, the greatest healthcare push in the history of our country. Mr. Speaker, let me make this opportunity to recognize the strong partnership that has coexisted between the government and organized labor over this period. I also want to use the occasion to thank the leadership of organized labor for their positive cooperation since 2017. Yesterday, as I mentioned, 14th November 2023, we successfully concluded negotiations for the 2024 single spine salary structure, the base pay, which culminated in a 23% increase in the base pay of the single spine salary structure across board from January to June 2024, and a readjustment of an additional 2% to 25% from July 2024 to December 2024. This wouldn't have been possible without the cooperation and strong leadership of labor unions. We thank you. Since then, we have stayed focused on our plans. However, it is not smooth sailing. There have been ebbs and flows. We have faced severe headwinds since March 2022 as an economy. The economy has faced multiple shocks. We have not created enough jobs and food inflation remains high, creating hardships, and we are committed to tackling this. However, we are re-anchoring our path using the PCPEC as our compass, our true north. Mr. Speaker, backed by the PCPEC, the 2023 budget seeks to restore and sustain macroeconomic stability. With hard work and the grace of God, we are on the path of stability and growth. Thankfully, a sense of a new beginning has taken hold. Despite our remarkable progress in the last 10 months, risks still abound. In October 2023, the IMF reported that global recovery remains low with little margin for error. The Kenyan finance minister also noted in September 2023, and I quote, "All low and middle income countries are walking a tightrope given the current economic constraints globally." Mr. Speaker, we are aware of these pressures and risks. So far, the implementation of government PCPEC, which addresses these pressures, is delivering the immediate intended results. We have successfully concluded the domestic debt operations and are making steady progress on external debt restructuring. We are implementing the new growth strategy, which prioritizes the completion of key transformative interventions to improve the quality of life and welfare of our people. Mr. Speaker, for our future, large public spending and deficits cannot remain embedded in our public policy program. So after achieving macroeconomic stability, the gains will be anchored on enhanced fiscal responsibility rules. The IMF is already working with us to strengthen these rules in order to maintain macroeconomic stability and implement structural reforms needed to sustain the country on a strong path of economic growth and transformation. Mr. Speaker, to achieve the 2024 budget has been developed to ensure the accelerated implementation of the PCPEC program, to expand investment in the rail sector to implement the new growth strategy, to consolidate and complete the ongoing infrastructural work, and to mobilize climate finance to enable us build resilience. The policy outlines in this budget will also ensure that Ghana remains attractive for domestic and foreign investment. The feedback from our extensive engagement with key stakeholders have also been included in our policy choices. Mr. Speaker, more importantly, the various components of the government-owned financial ecosystem, such as Development Bank of Ghana, GCB, CBG, GESTEL, Ghana Commodity Exchange, GIF, Venture Capital, Trust Fund, GEA, will all be strengthened to enable us to address the concerns of the private sector in respect of access to credit, access to skills, labor, and raw materials. Mr. Speaker, we do this knowing that the key to our prosperity is not handing out free goods and services to our underprivileged folks, rather it is by providing skills and financing to enable people to generate income and jobs. Mr. Speaker, we continue to optimize our tourism infrastructure. The improvement in key tourist sites have been complemented by aggressive marketing to reposition Ghana. Next month, as in recent years, our country will expect an increase in tourists seeking to patronize the December in Ghana event. Our investment in CCTVs and our roads and provisions of increased logistics for the security services will continue to support these events and make them memorable. These investments would also facilitate the hosting of the 13th All Africa Games in Accra from 8th to 23rd March 2024. This will put Ghana in the spotlight. In addition, Ghana has strategically positioned itself to mobilize climate financing and champion a fit-for-climate global architecture. Mr. Speaker, we also are creating a new financing division at the ministry to ensure that we stay ahead of the game. Mr. Speaker, a new and exciting opportunity is Ghana's newfound wealth in lithium and graphite, which will be extracted in line with the green minerals policy to support our energy transition. Mr. Speaker, the Minerals Income Investment Fund has acquired a 6% contributing interest in Atlantic Lithium's Ghana portfolio. This will lead us to a new negotiating posture for all future extractive industry investments. Mr. Speaker, in line with Ghana's localization policy, Atlantic Lithium will list on the Ghana Stock Exchange to further enhance and deepen local participation. Mr. Speaker, we are in a better place than we were before. The nation has been positively impacted and positioned to harness its prospects. We must move forward courageously, for as 2 Timothy 1 says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but, Mr. Speaker, a spirit of courage and of love and of a sound mind, and we must press on. It is in this same vein, Mr. Speaker, of courage and power that we have forged a resilience since 2017. It's important to recall that despite, Mr. Speaker, the poly-crisis of 2019, the poly-crisis in 2020, we have together taken, Mr. Speaker, all of us, a GDP of 219 billion to 1 trillion GDP this year. A key lesson from this leap since 2017 is for us, Mr. Speaker, to eschew unfounded pessimism and nihilism. We have shown, Mr. Speaker, that it is possible. It is possible to triple, to quadruple our GDP. It is possible to create a technologically savvy environment. It is possible to be the investment hub of the region. We should therefore, Mr. Speaker, be collectively proud of ourselves and the can-do spirit of our people. We have proven that a lot more is possible if we stay the course and believe in a future of immense possibilities. To realize our common aspiration, Mr. Speaker, we must continue to speak one language. This is Ghana, a nation united in diversity, a resilient nation on the path to manifest destiny, every opportunity to safeguard our progress must be protected by adherence to exhortations of Genesis 11:6, that if we speak one language, we can do the impossible. Mr. Speaker, we therefore present to you the Inkunim Victory Budget, a people with a manifest destiny for greatness. We are resilient and we shall prevail because, Mr. Speaker, as we have always said, the battle is indeed the Lord's. God bless our homeland Ghana and make us steadfast to build together a nation that is great and strong in unity. Mr. Speaker, so I move.